Welcome everyone to the clash between the world champion Domaraju Gukesh and Frederik Svane. Frederik is a strong German player born in 2004. He's 21 years old and currently has a rating of 2640. His peak rating was 2671. The first game between Gukesh and Svane ended in a draw. Now the second one where Gukesh has the white pieces. He'll definitely be trying to press a bit. We have the guest here who's making the first move and makes the move. Ooh, the pawn is d4, d5. Yeah, puts it on d4 and Gukesh takes it back. Actually, it was e4, not d4. Yeah. Well, the players are ready now. A very important round because the one who wins goes through to round 4 and Gukesh opens the game with pawn to e4. Frederik responds back with e5 here and knight comes out to f3. Knight comes to c6 and Gukesh brings his bishop out to c4. The Italian usually is used as a means to sort of put a lot of pressure on black these days. You know, it's a fighting opening, and the same can be said about Rui Lopez, but Gukesh's choice was the Italian for this one. Bishop c5 and now short castle. And Frederik, okay, there are many choices here. d6 is one of them. For the time being, black keeps his king in the center. Pawn to c3. Eventually, with the idea of breaking with d4, a5 played. And rook to e1. A useful move defending the pawn on e4. And black castles. Well, Gukesh can go for some bishop g5 lines, but he first plays h3, and I think this is the more positional way to play the position h6. And Frederik Svane has played this before. Knight to d2, and generally you bring your knight to f1 to g3. Typical maneuvers. Bishop b6 is a move that is lesser played, like you had 1300 games here, and after bishop b6 only 70 games. a4, Gukesh still blitzing it out, and now bd7 goes into really a territory where there are not many games, just couple of games, and Gukesh still prepared, plays b3. Slightly offbeat, but you can see what Gukesh's plan is. He was bishop e6 after provoking b3. The idea is to put the bishop on b2 and eventually force the move pawn to d4. Black goes king to h8. So if you take here, I can take back with the knight. Rook a2 played here. Again, a move that is very deep. At some point, the rook can defend the pawn on f2 as well, and be useful on the second rank. Knight h5, he's going in with knight f4, bishop, he jumps with knight to f1. You know, this typical attacking ideas with queen f6, knight f4 can happen. Frederik plays it, his knight comes into f4. And now Gukesh can play bishop c1 and he plays it. So now look at this rook, very useful in a way. The bishop attacks the knight, and I think Gukesh is happy with his opening position. The computer also assesses it as slightly better for white. Knight g3 could be an idea. Yes, plays it. Knight to g3. And Frederik starts his attack on the king side with g5, cementing the knight on f4. The knight goes back to h2. He wants to play his knight to g4, another knight to h5, queen comes in to g6 and bishop to e3, offering a trade of bishops. I believe if you take here, I can take back with the pawn, kicking the knight away. So bishop, he plays pawn to d5, pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn. 10 minutes for Frederik, and Gukesh has close to 36 minutes. You have to make 20 more moves. Bishop d5 makes a lot of sense, knight d5, and then some rook c2 business to defend this, but instead he goes knight to f3 and rook a d8. There's pressure down the d file. He brings his rook to d2, and now he takes. You must take with the d pawn, and f6, just cementing the structure here. The knight on f4 is quite active. Gukesh brings his knight to e4. Currently the position looks around even. He takes, rook takes d2, queen takes d2, and now rook d8. The queen is attacked, the knight is ready to jump into d3. Gukesh plays queen e3, putting pressure on the b6 pawn. f5, kicking the knight away. The knight needs to move. And look at Frederik's time, just 4 minutes on the clock. We are on move 27. And now when he played knight d3, he has 1 minute 50 seconds. The rook attacks the knight, but now you have f4, forking the two pieces. He finds it with just 1 minute 7 seconds. Gukesh, is he losing a piece? No, queen e4. Attacking. If you take, I take with the knight. But the best move is king h7. Again finds it. So you can't move the knight. So you must take the queen. He takes, king takes, and the king is getting activated. Black's position seems more pleasant at this point of time. Because look at the knight here. The king side majority. Meanwhile, white's majority on the queen side a bit crippled there. King f5, knight comes to d2, defending the knight on e4, and knight to c5. A very important move here for Gukesh is g4, kicking the king away. If you take here, I take with the pawn, because knight e4, there's rook f1, and then I take. White is better there, but Gukesh goes rook e1. He defends the knight this way. Knight jumps back, and with 33 seconds, I think Gukesh can repeat. But no, he quickly moves. I believe Frederik would have been okay with a draw at this point of time, because he's so low on time. But he plays h5. Excellent move. And I think Black's position is somehow easier to play. You know, g4 coming in here. He jumps back, knight c5. And f3, cementing the knight on e4, and rook d3. Another wonderful move to play, and you can see Frederik making his moves with just 3 or 4 seconds on the clock. King f2 played. And now g4 again played with just 1 second on the clock. Oh my goodness. That's just insane, the nerves that Frederik has here. And now rook h1 could be an idea to bring the rook, trying to get it activated from this side. But Gukesh goes rook e1, the 39th move, and maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it's a mistake here, because now you can play g3 check, and Svane goes g3, a good move. If king f1, you can always maneuver your knight from e7 to f5 to e3. So he goes king e2, trying to keep the king a bit active, putting pressure here, threatening perhaps knight c5. Rook e3 check. 40 moves are done. Both players will get 30 extra minutes. And I think this is great news for Black, because the position is winning now, it seems. Somehow the fact that Gukesh made a couple of inaccuracies means that his position is under grave threat. Rook takes rook check. And he comes back. You want to take this with the king. King takes e1. And now king e6. The king goes to d1. Well, the problem here that white is facing is this maneuver knight e7. The knight comes to f5. From there can go to h4. Can come to e3. It's very dangerous. So for knight h4 you have king f1, and for knight e3 you have knight takes g3. So for now it seems like white has things covered. King e7 played, and knight jumps back to e4. Now if this position itself is reached with white to move, it could be very nice. So look at what Frederik does. King e6. Very cool. Knight g5, and now he triangulates here. He goes king f6, attacking the knight. Knight e4, and now a very important move, king e7. And with this you've reached the same position with white to move, and actually very difficult, because if you move the knight from d2, b3 is hanging, so he must take. You can't even move the king because knight h4 or knight e3. So he takes on c5. Frederik takes, and knight e4. Again, the idea is knight h4, king f1, knight e3, knight g3. So somehow tactically staying intact there. b6, another question now. And he blunders here, king d3. I believe Gukesh has missed knight h4 move somehow or something, because he's thinking if knight e3, I can simply take knight g3 and it's equal. But what about this move? And look at Frederik. He's very surprised, and he plays knight h4, b4 by Gukesh. That's the way. But knight takes g2, and actually there's hardly any counterplay. B takes c5, b takes c5, and he takes the pawn on c5, but now simply move the knight away. Knight e3, g2, g1 is coming. I mean, you will have to go back with your king, and now just simply snatch the pawn on c4. Everything's weak. Knight b2, this is weak. King is coming in, and Gukesh resigns. What an incredible play by Frederik Svane. I must say that it was perhaps one of the most clinical victories that you could see out there. Fantastic play by him. And Gukesh, well, I think there was one chance where if he had agreed to a draw close to move 40, because his opponent had less time and could have perhaps repeated, not so sure, but could have. And the fact that there was no repetition, and once Frederik played some insanely good moves under time pressure, at one point even with 1 second, just made it absolutely impossible for Gukesh to come back. And Gukesh is eliminated from the World Cup 2025. Frederik Svane moves ahead. Kudos to the young German player. Clearly a brilliant performance by him.